Welcome everyone to Spoiler Warning featuring myself, Tom Colohue. Our top story today, around which everything else will orbit, is Vince McMahon moving into the Endeavour role full-time in charge of both WWE and UFC. What will this mean for Triple H, for Nick Khan, for a number of wrestlers who are right now looking over their shoulder with a possibility that unfortunately they may be losing their jobs? So a lot of people looking over their shoulders, a lot of questions being asked, as well as conversations on the positions of Brock Lesnar and Bobby Lashley, who may well be looking at conjoined UFC WWE contracts, amongst others. Gable Stevenson's position in the company, Matt Riddle's position in the company, a little bit on the positioning of Shane and Stephanie, what's going to happen tonight on Raw, and just as an aside, why so many WWE wrestlers are talking about CM Punk. Yes, I know a lot of people are really obsessed with the CM Punk thing, and yes, I have some stuff to say about it. So welcome everyone. Very glad to see so many of you already, launching at a pretty fast pace here. Hello Brad, hello Joe, hello Gordy, hello Lucha, hello Naz, hello Adam, how you doing mate? Hello Truckopedia, hello AKD2K12, hello Daniela, hello Razar, hello KJ, hello Spider Boss, hello Bailey. So plenty of people already saying hi. As always, when it comes to a show like this, it basically is boosted by likes and by chat rate. So the more you're talking, the more you're hitting like, the better for the growth of the channel, the more people end up coming straight in. So welcome everyone as we start up a brand new show. I'm going to sneeze, I do apologise, but the moment is unavoidable. These do. Or maybe I won't. Anyway. Let's see who we've got and who's asking questions. Brad Becker says, please like, chat, and recommend to your friends. I'm definitely ready, sir. Thank you, Brad. Adam says, Tom, waiting for this one. Glad to hear it, mate. Glad you're excited. Trekkipedia says, what's up, everyone? Not only is tonight the final Raw of the McMahon-owned WWE, but tomorrow is the first Endeavour-owned WWE with NXT. And very telling, by the way, that Becky Lynch is making an appearance. AK says, hi. Welcome, AK. Daniela says, good evening. Razal says, hello, Tom. How are you doing? Very, very well. Thank you. You may have noticed my numbers continue to go up. We are now at 4,771 subscribers. By the end of the month, we will be on 5,000. KJ says, what's up, Tom? Ed says, wouldn't the releases because of the merger be more focused on office staff than about talent and TV staffing? More on that shortly. Welcome, Ed. Nice to see you. Bismo says, hi, Tom. Hello, Bismo. And Eric says, hello, Tom, as well. Spider-Boss is asking for an update on Matt Riddle. More on that later. Also asking what's next for Rey Mysterio's USA title reign. More wrestling matches. Bailey says, hello. Hello, Bailey. Spider-Boss says, does WWE have any plans for the women's tag team titles? No, and there's a reason for this. Whenever they do manage to put something together, someone gets injured, the championship seems to be a little bit cursed. Mustafa says, hey Tom, this week has been mind-blowing for me. Have some of that good vibe. Good to hear, mate. Very happy to hear it. Andy Barr says, hello everyone. Hello, Andy. And Adam says, I promise this week I'm going to connect on having you on Foundation Radio. These past weeks have been ridiculous. Wow, a lot of people suddenly chatting. Can't wait to have you on. Appreciate that. I'm very much looking forward to it, sir. And I hope we can connect about it soon. Welcome, Martin. Thank you very kindly renewing your membership as a channel supporter for an 11th month. That is a very long time. Welcome to the show. Spider-Boss says about Rhea versus Raquel 2 on Raw. Somehow I see someone from the Judgment Day getting involved. Of course they will. They've only banned one person. Noob says, hello Tom, this is truly the end of the Vince McMahon era. Debatable as to whether this is the end, because Vince McMahon will still be involved, but more to see on that. John Gillis says, excited to see the growth your page has made, my friend. Thank you, John, I appreciate that. Pete says, we'll be lurking. Hope you're well, my lord. Esteemed. Evening all. Thank you kindly. Brad says, bless you anyway, Tom. Yeah, didn't come. Weird one. Leon says, hi, Tom. Hope you're doing well. Doing very well, thank you. Marcel says, hi, Tom and chat. Welcome, Marcel, and thank you very much for reaching out to everyone. KJ says, speaking of Punk, Zelina put him over. As I say, I will be talking about why so many WWE wrestlers are talking about CM Punk. It might not be what you expect there. Trekkipedia says, Tom, do you think ticket prices will go up for weekly TV or just the pay-per-views? I think something just exploded outside. Yeah, that's a very difficult question to answer, especially at this point in time. I do not know the ins and outs and workings of the company beyond what I'm going to share. I cannot sit here and say who's going to have more expensive tickets. Eddie says, hi, great, Tom. Wow, guys are being really kind at the moment. LF says, hi, Tom, is there any change you would personally like to see with the merger? More on that shortly. Michael says, hi, Tom, so I guess Vince is about to be future endeavoured. Wow, we are scraping the barrel tonight. Thank you, Michael. Martin says, good evening, Tom, and all in the chat. Thank you once again for greeting everyone. Danielle says, weather's still very hot. Thankfully, not where I am right now. It is instead thunderstorms, which I'm happy about. Eric says, Sasha Banks and Naomi put a powerful curse on the Women's Tag Team Championships. They did not, thankfully. Dan from Eve says, evening. Glad to see that the show which I attended recently is now on your members-only section. I promise you I will be there shortly. John says, once Endeavour takes over, Tom will WWE start signing and having wrestlers showing up. Once again, I will be reporting on all of this as soon as I've caught up with the chat. Spider-Boss says the women's tag team titles are more cursed than Man United with the Glazers, which a lot of people did not understand. Joe says, hello Marcel, how are you doing today? Like it when you guys connect like that. Leon says, Fightful recently reported LA Knight has not signed a new contract with WWE. Apparently they are far apart on money, which is true. There is a conversation actively ongoing. It's not necessarily just about the money, but the distance in the push. LA Knight is not seen by the WWE as a top-level star, but the fan reactions he's getting suggest to him that he should be. Eric says, hi Tom, were you able to confirm with what I told you? I get told a lot, mate. We'll have to have a conversation about that separately. Daryl says, hope they trade the women's tag team title for women's intercontinental. They will not be doing so. Alicia says, hi Tom and chat. Welcome, Alicia. Dan says, is that bad where you live? The boom equals meh. Yeah, pretty much. A couple of doors down, there was a house that just burned the entire roof out. Yeah, they just left it like that for about a year. It happens. There was 2 more, like the next street. They just burn out. Apparently that's a thing. There's 4 broken windows. It's a bit up. I can't afford a great place to live, but I'm doing better than I was. Razar says, do you think WWE would have been sold if the Vince stuff didn't happen? There were rumours of a sale even before that, once Nick Khan was brought in. Yes, there were. There were considerable rumours that Nick Khan was being brought in to streamline the company for a sale. I do talk in depth about Nick Khan on this channel. Certainly those videos still get a lot of attention because of it. Pace says, I will endeavour to be better in chat. Jesus Christ. Is that where we are now, guys? Is that where we are? Khalid is here, says, hey, Tom, mate. Welcome, Khalid. Christian says, I'm confused with what is currently going on with Gable Steveson. Is he still part of WWE, or are WWE going to rethink hiring him? He is still under contract for the WWE. He's a flight risk. More on that shortly. Martin says, will we get new openings and sets, etc. after tonight? Endeavour putting their mark down, or we expect no changes? I would not be expecting changes. I'll get into this shortly. Spider-Boss says, Fightful talking about the Endeavour merger with WWE just confirmed, spoiler warning said first months ago. Eric says, cue the memory remains for the McMahon era ending. Oof. Harsh. John Gillis says, Zilla Fatu left reality of wrestling. Could he be WWE bound? He's Umarga's son. He could be, but they don't need to hire everyone. Gotcha, Dan. That says, Tom, is there any way of Seth having a match, pardon me, with Gunter? If yes, when? Yes, when they want to. Bismo says, Tom, again, I want to thank you again for your streams. It was brightened my day due to taking care of my uncle who has dementia. Extremely difficult times for me. The hour you're on helps so much. I'm honoured and flattered that you would say that, Bismo. Anything I can do, I am obviously very appreciative of very kind words from you, and I'm glad that we can bring a little bit of levity to the moment. Khalid says, Tom, will the WWE change? Yes, there will be someone new on top of it. Michael says, yes, that's where we are, lame joke. Joe says, Tom, I love everything. You make me really happy when you do these videos. Thank you kindly. Martin says, come on guys, let's smash those likes over 80 in. There are 87 people watching and 33 likes. If you're able to, please remember to hit that thumbs up. Jay Quick says, hey Tom, do you think that Endeavour will release Riddle since he's not really learning his lesson? More on Riddle shortly. Dan says people need to stop getting their WWE news from Chael Sonnen. Not a name I'm familiar with. Bailey says, thankfully, fewer are worrying about Endeavour than if the Saudis bought WWE. Yeah, typically that's how it works. Hector says, afternoon, Tom. The Observer reported AEW All Out is on track to have the lowest pay-per-view buy since 2020 Full Gear. Maybe having a pay-per-view in back-to-back weeks wasn't the best idea. I also think the loss of CM Punk certainly didn't help the situation. Spider-Boss says, now that Endeavour took over, do you think Kevin Dunn and Bruce Pritchard will leave WWE? Nope. A lot of people asking, hey, now that this has happened, will this massive change immediately happen? No. The answer's always going to be no. Ori says, Tom, my favourite Monday afternoon newsman, hope you're well. Thank you, Ori. Hope you're well also. I did see that you're taking a bit of a break recently, and I wanted to reach out. Apologies, I haven't already done so. Daniela says, what's happening between the Bloodline and Judgment Day? The end of SmackDown confused me a bit. All-out faction warfare. We are building towards war games. We need factions in order to do so. So they very, very much need to ensure that a lot of different people are basically at war at all times. War games, after all, might go multiple teams this time and not just the two. Stuart here says, hi Tom, watching slightly delayed tonight. Welcome Stuart, thank you very much for joining us. Noob says, with the merger getting close to the end, will WWE plan on free agent wrestlers? More on that shortly. Razar says, do you watch or follow UFC? Kind of. I watch some UFC, mostly as a way to connect to certain members of the family. It was very helpful when taking over as stepdad, because actual dad is a fan of UFC, and I'm a wrestling fan. Easy to do. Daryl says, Gunter versus Seth at WrestleMania is my guess. Seth needs a break. Eddie says, AOP update when they will return to TV. Apparently, they've been in the company for about a year now and not appearing. So if they've not appeared yet, certainly I have questions. Dan says, Chael Sonnen is a former UFC headliner / mainstay. Does a YouTube channel, did a video saying WWE released Gable Steveson. Ah, right. Okay, more on that coming. Thank you for clarifying. I do appreciate that and the sourcing of it. Spider-Boss says, I still wonder who's going to SmackDown as part of Jey Uso being traded to Raw. It's taken a long time, isn't it? It's almost like they want you to tune into every single show until eventually confirming one way or another. Spider-Boss says, I think we need Regal shouting War Games this year. You won't get it. Not this year. Jay Quick says, the fact that this is the end of McMahon's running WWE, it's history. And mine says, suppose if it ain't broke, why fix? Drekipedia says, is Asuka leaving? She said she has a little while left on Twitter. She will leave if she chooses to. So I don't see it yet, but she has been told not to expect too many big championship moments in her future. So I wouldn't be too surprised if a doorway then opens a little later. Personally, I expect we'll be seeing her in a lot of different companies in the days to come, because I feel like the WWE, with where they are at the moment, are going to basically stop giving her chances before she's ready to stop being a main attraction. John says Kyrie's been doing her farewell tour, which she has. King Arthur says, Tom, I think Roman will beat Cody again if they face again. In my opinion, do you think he will? No, no, and no. Q43 says, hello, Tom. Could you see Logan Paul signing an Endeavour contract? Yes, I could. Yes, I could. I'll explain more about what an Endeavour contract is and what that actually means shortly, but that's a great question, Q43. Let's open it up to the entire selection of people here, because there are quite a few of you. Do you think Logan Paul would take up the offer of going to the UFC? Leisha says, hi, can you elaborate on Jimmy Uso plans? I'm a wee bit confused where they're taking this. Wanted out of the bloodline and now he's back in. Sure, I can absolutely elaborate. The WWE is still making this up as they go along. It's causing some consternation and some issues. Jimmy Uso is not who they're focused on. His entire storyline will be in service of other people, such as Solo Sikoa, AJ Styles, the upcoming War Games match, and eventually Jey Uso. Jey Uso is considered to be the star. Moxie says, yo, Tom. Hello, Moxie. And Spider-Boss says, how long until Charlotte or Bianca get involved in the Asuka versus Io on SmackDown? Soon. It is a phased return. Pete says, WWE World Wrestling Endeavour. I finish and drop the mic. Thank you. Daniela says, that would make sense. I could imagine Finn, Priest, Dom, Rhea versus Lashley, Profits, Bianca versus Roman, Solo, Jimmy. But the only problem is the bloodline doesn't have a female. Not at the moment. No, that is true. Brad says, yes, he can see that happening. King Azza says, do you think it will be Cody to be traded to Raw? It kind of is the only thing that makes sense at the moment. Someone of Jey Uso's level, it'll have to be a top-level talent. Certainly it could be someone like Drew McIntyre, for example, but Cody's the only one who really makes sense. Bailey says, are UFC personnel considered independent contractors? I don't fully know on that one. I've got to be completely honest with you. I'm not fully aware of the situation and will need to do further research into it, but it's a good question. Thank you for asking. I will take that one away. Dan says, the thing about any major WWE names leaving WWE is they've earned so much money in WWE that the indies can't really offer anything comparatively because the performers aren't the same level of draw. Thank you for that, Dan. That is someone with a lot of experience booking talent saying that. And I know that full well because you, of course, have Nina Samuels as quite an important part of the overall Eve family. She's adding a lot to the shows at the moment, and I do think the fact that she's also there at the merch tables afterwards, trying to put herself and other people over, that's an amazing thing. A genuinely amazing thing. For a while, in fact, in many ways, the reason and the method by which I got involved in wrestling news was that I went to local shows near to me in Blackpool, PCW, originally Preston City Wrestling, now Pro Championship Wrestling or something like that. Worked with them briefly for a little while. They were bringing in a lot of wrestlers at the level of Will Ospreay, John Morrison, Matt Hardy, RVD, etc., etc. Quite a lot of wrestlers of that caliber. I did get a bit of information later as to the amount of money they were spending to make that happen. Wow. But it was lovely to meet heroes of mine like Matt Hardy, like AJ Styles, and certainly Nina Samuels for a little bit as well. King Azza says, do you think Cody will be traded to SmackDown? Yes. Hector says, Lashley and Julius Creed are two names I'm keeping an eye on when it comes to having an Endeavour contract. More on that shortly. Spider-Boss says, with Jey Uso being the star, I think Jimmy Uso is a Marty Jannetty of the bloodline. It's a harsh way to say it, but it's not necessarily an unfair way to say it. Trekkie Peter says, cash in tonight possibly, exactly as likely as any other night. Vegeta says, Jimmy is heel, so why not be with Roman and Solo? Because he walked out and attacked Roman. Razar suggests, then, now, forever, Endeavour to be the new tagline. Dan says, unless they go to AEW or similar, which is few in number, there's not a lot of places for them to work without a big pay drop. This, of course, is in reference to WWE wrestlers. Ironically, given the situation, Pete says, happy birthday to Braun Strowman, 40 this week. Someone who openly said he would not work indies after leaving WWE and then kind of didn't. John says, Tom, Raw's a lot of talented women not being used, like Candice, Indy, Nikki and Tegan. Do you know where Tegan has been? Creative hiatus. They basically have nothing for them. They are experimenting with a few different things at live shows, ultimately not quite working at the moment. Moxie says, Tom, this is a bit of an early pick, but after SmackDown, looks like War Games is going to be Roman, Solo, Finn, Dominic and Priest versus Sami, Jay, KO, Cody and Seth. Few stretches there. Marcel says, I hope Logan Paul goes to UFC so we can see him get knocked out. A lot of people said that was going to happen with the boxing. He survived. Dan says, and they're on more now than back then because the WWE money is so much more now compared to that era. Very true. That was around 2014 and it is a very different situation. Sean says, hello, Tom. Hello, Sean. Chris says, good evening, Tom. Good evening, Chris. Spider-Boss says, Jimmy Uso going back to the bloodline. I think Roman and Solo will turn on Jimmy because Roman never forgets betrayals. Michael says, is it bad that I want some people to be released so they can actually be used somewhere else? I think it's not necessarily unfair to want to see wrestlers used elsewhere, though I wouldn't necessarily hope for them to be released. What I will say is that overall, I know that you're a big Mercedes fan. She's certainly done pretty well. Daniela says, I'm thinking that as the bloodline don't have a female, they could leave Rhea and Bianca out of it, which is a very fair point. And also says, Paul Heyman's birthday is today. Eric says, do you think WWE might possibly do a Fatu family triple threat match between Jey Uso, Jimmy Uso and, Solo Sikoa? It's not something I've really considered, but I don't hate the idea. Leon says, Dave Meltzer reported WWE signed Carlito without knowing what to do with him. That sounds very WWE. You say that, but at the time, wasn't Dave Meltzer also reporting that around then there was a hiring freeze? Correct me if I'm wrong, I know Fightful covered it. John Gillis says, do you think Gable interrupts Gunter tonight and gets one more shot? Nope, freeze the charm, and we all know it. And John, I've already read that one. Moxie says, Tom, I think Jimmy rejoins the bloodline, but only to get Solo out of it. Good luck to him. That ain't happening. Vijit says, no one destroys in AEW. Tony hates big guys, which absolutely is not true. Otherwise, there wouldn't be the Miro fight that happened recently. And Moxie says, Tom, who do you see entering War Games? Lots of different possibilities. I think it will be 3 teams this time. Dan says, when CM Punk went to UFC, they put him on with equivalent level talent. If Dana White and Logan Paul could do business where Logan Paul trains as a recognised team, I could see them doing similar, which I absolutely agree with. Eric, it is a spoiler warning show. We will not be talking favourite candies, but I appreciate what you're trying to do. Jay Big says, I'd love to see 4 teams of 3 at War Games. I think we're building to at least 3 teams of 3. We'll see if we can get a 4th. Daniela said, do you have any idea of when Roman's next title defense happens? The most likely scenario will be that Roman will defend his championship next at the beginning of November in Saudi Arabia. Spiderboss says, if the bloodline ever need a woman, I think Tamina, Isera or Ava Rain. There are indeed people who are currently not being used, but they would need a storyline reason to do so. And John says, does anyone have an update on Orton? Me. The most recent updates on Randy Orton and the most accurate and proven updates on Randy Orton are on the Tom Colohue channel, starting way back in February, and all of the things that I said in that video have been confirmed since. So, we are 20 minutes in, and so far we haven't actually got to the news. So, let's get to it. I'm going to drink some Iron Brew. I'm going to do my usual thing here. We currently have 97 people watching and only the 42 likes. That means more than half of you have not yet hit that thumbs up. Please consider doing so. It would be a massive help to the growth of the channel. Chat rate is doing pretty good at the moment, but as I talk through this, tell me something. Respond for me, give me reactions, make it work, all right? Make it work. We'll see a massive spike in the channel if we're able to react and do chat rate and stuff. It's a dumb thing to ask for, but it's something to ask for anyway. I mean, I'm not always great at the chat rate stuff. I'm kind of not great at the whole YouTube stuff at times. But we have 100 people watching, 49 likes. One more gets us up to 50. One more gets us up to 50. So, Vince McMahon is Vince McMahon is officially going to be putting himself into position in Endeavour rather than the WWE tomorrow. The deal is expected to go ahead and it will then be floated on the... I'm going to slow down. I'm going to rewind. Okay? I'm going to slow down, I'm going to rewind. Thank you, LA Dark Knight. Vince McMahon is stepping away from the WWE to take his position at Endeavour, the company which will be overtaking both UFC and WWE. Vince McMahon's position will be to have complete oversight of both the WWE and the UFC, and all final decisions will be going through him, but the vast majority of the day-by-day management will be done by other people, primarily in WWE, Triple H, who will be involved as Chief Content Officer and will be heavily involved in talent relations, and Nick Khan, who will be both President of the WWE and Chief Financial Officer. He is the one who has been limiting some of the signings recently, and he is the one who has been tying the hands ever so slightly of Triple H. If anyone has been signed to new deals but have not made their debut, Nick Khan, for a long time, following the example of Tony Khan when AEW first launched, has been ensuring that their contracts do not activate until they actually debut and start wrestling. On the UFC side, Dana White will be essentially subordinate to Vince McMahon. I cannot sit here and say that he's particularly happy about that because there is a little bit of history there. But what I will say is that Dana White is expecting quite a bit more money and quite a few big names to be flooding into the UFC. Certain promises have been made as regards the sharing of talent, but Vince McMahon will be overall running UFC. There are plans for conjoined UFC and WWE contracts, the Endeavour contract that we mentioned earlier, and these contracts are set up so that someone can work as both UFC and WWE. There are certainly some people who are immediately likely to be picking up on these. Those obvious names will be Brock Lesnar, who requires a new contract now in order to wrestle again, and Bobby Lashley. Bobby Lashley worked for Bellator, not the UFC, but certainly has a pedigree about him. Vince McMahon is exploring the possibility, along with Dana White and in fact Triple H, about some conjoined storylines as well. And this is a really, really interesting one to talk about. And if any news goes far, this should be the one. There is an idea in place that's being pitched to Dana White, with the idea being that certain wrestlers will have joined UFC and WWE contracts and will appear in the UFC to wrestle essentially squash matches, to wrestle people below their skill level in an effort to build them up so that once they return to the WWE, they are considered a more credible threat. Logan Paul is not one of these, but the ones I've aforementioned, Brock Lesnar, Bobby Lashley, are certainly among them. Question for all of you. Would you tune into the UFC to see squash matches with Bobby Lashley or Brock Lesnar against other people? I'd also like to take this moment to mention that this pretty much confirms that Ronda Rousey will not be returning to the UFC, because if she was going to return to the UFC, she had the option the entire time of just staying in the WWE, knowing that a possibility was coming where she could have a conjoined contract. Now, when it comes to Triple H's role as Chief Content Officer, he is expecting to largely be left alone, and Vince McMahon once again has made promises. Whether he keeps those promises, historically Vince McMahon has not been the biggest progenitor of agreeing and keeping those promises, as people like Bobby Lashley are fully aware. Bobby Lashley was promised Brock Lesnar. So some of the squash matches could well be building to more between Brock Lesnar and Bobby Lashley, but Brock Lesnar historically not keen on that fight. Not keen on that fight at all. Triple H is expected to be largely left alone to run the creative. Nick Khan is expected to be largely left alone to run the chief financial officer role and, of course, to run the business aspects of the WWE. It'll be a very clear partnership. The business aspect will be run by Nick Khan. The creative product will be led by Triple H. This does mean that Shane McMahon and Stephanie McMahon, once expected to inherit the world of the WWE, are expecting to receive nothing. They are expecting to receive nothing. There'll be plenty more news on this one. I've got a bit more on Gable Steveson, a bit more on Matt Riddle, as well as what you can expect the impact of this for Raw tonight. But I do have to discuss the possibility of budget cuts and people losing their jobs. So the WWE, since WrestleMania, has been enacting a plan led by Nick Khan with the intention of increasing revenue. A large part of this is why the WWE have never booked Wembley, whereas AEW have. AEW paid for the privilege of booking Wembley, whereas the WWE are trying to negotiate a deal where the City of London and the Council of London basically state that they will give Wembley to the WWE and in fact give them some money as well, as has happened in Cardiff and as has happened for Money in the Bank in London too. This is why you are seeing the WWE travel to many different countries. Those countries are paying for the privilege because of the possibility of greater boost to the economy in that area. The WWE are trying with that, and indeed with what they're currently doing with NXT, trying to raise the profile and guaranteeing themselves a better TV deal. They are trying to increase their revenue so that nobody has to be released. I cannot sit here and guarantee that has been successful. Okay? I'm not going to mess around on it. I cannot state that has been successful. We don't know at this point whether there will be releases. But as Ed did say earlier, if there are going to be releases, it looks more likely that we'll see back office staff and back office roles merged. So people will start working for both UFC and WWE. This would mean, for example, the WWE editing team would be used to create UFC YouTube content, UFC highlight reels and hype packages, and of course commercials as well. The marketing teams would be combined also. This means that roles would by and large be mixed, by and large be merged, and Endeavour itself would become the actual top level, with very few actual singularly WWE or singularly UFC employees. There are a number of different plans in place. Nick Khan, of course, being Chief Financial Officer, will be heavily involved in this, as will Dana White from the UFC, but it will come down to Endeavour. Ari Emanuel is more involved in this than Vince McMahon himself. There's a bit more to come, but we're starting to stack up from some of those comments. I'm going to read through the comments and see where we are. Trekipedia says, everyone hit the thumbs up, share it out and subscribe, please. Tom is awesome. Thank you, Trekipedia. I appreciate that. We are now up to 55 likes, which is a great number. 5 more gets us to 60. Just going to point that out. Spider-Boss says, I'm ready for the CM Punk going back to WWE rumours, heading the Survivor Series in Chicago. That's been happening since literally the second he was fired. Chris says, what does that mean for his creative input on the WWE? For Vince McMahon, he still has the power of oversight. Triple H will be in charge of the content, as it were. It is believed at this point that Vince McMahon will simply be too busy to actually be directly involved with creative. It's Vince McMahon, though. I don't 100% believe that. Spider-Boss says, Vince taking over UFC, so CM Punk will work for Vince once again since he's a commentator in UFC. Will he? We'll see how that goes. Eric says, Dana White being a subordinate of Vince McMahon. Daniel Berry says, yo Daniel, how you doing, mate? Nas says, John Jones is going to kill Cody Rhodes. I don't see that one happening, thankfully. Spider-Boss says, I'd love to see Rhea Ripley in the UFC's Octagon versus Amanda Nunes. Rhea Ripley's tough. I don't see her getting that contract. As regards the idea of using the squash matches, Nas says, the idea is pretty cool. Brad says, hell yes. Daz says, no. Nas says, hell yeah, I'd watch. Dan says, I watch far more UFC than wrestling. I don't see this happening. Which is fair. Dana White will definitely be pushing back on it. Michael says, I think that's a pretty terrible idea, quite honestly. Yeah. Dan's basically going into all of the details as to why I don't think it's going to happen, but it's a fun one to mention because it is being put forward. Adrian says the old guys, I mean the older guys, more experienced talent, also maybe a nicer way to say it, like Edge, Styles, Lashley will be using a new era. Edge might not have a contract in the new era. Also, I wouldn't necessarily call it a new era. Bailey says squash matches in UFC are not guaranteed. Reminds me a little of the Brawl for All. Yup, that'd be fun. Hector says the issue with Brock is I don't know if he could be clean for 6 months and be in the USADA testing pool, because last time he was in the UFC, his win was overturned due to a failed drug test. I can't recall the exact details of that, but I do recall hearing it, Hector. And Dan says you start mixing the two, that being UFC and WWE, and fight fixing rumours begin. That's death for the UFC when it comes to the bookies, and UFC is a Las Vegas company, which is exactly what I was thinking as well. Thank you very much for putting words to what I was thinking in a much better way than I was able to. Barry says I wouldn't tune into UFC for anything personally. What I've seen of it, it's very dull. And Chris agrees, says it's lately UFC hasn't done anything to wow me. Ori says nope, WWE should stay WWE, UFC should stay MMA, no thanks on the crossover. Andrew Quinn says, hi Tom, basically, I mean, is there an update on CM Punk WWE speculation? That's what I meant to tweet before. I was having a joke, mate. Hopefully that came across. There is a little bit on Punk. Stick around, it'll be the next thing. Eric says, Stephanie McMahon and Shane McMahon have been left out in the cold. True, though, Shane McMahon is still technically employed by the WWE. Michael says, I don't really think there are as many crossover, UFC WWE fans as they think. UFC fans are insulted at the thought of WWE being scripted. I should point out that there is one thing that Vince McMahon has been looking for a long time in WWE. The UFC gives him that credibility. He wants to stand alongside the actual physical combat sports. Razal says Dana White has said that Endeavor are pretty hands-off with the UFC, and him and his people still run it, but UFC wasn't merging with another brand like WWE is now joining UFC. Vince McMahon is not a hands-off person. Sean says, chance of seeing Roman in the Octagon? 0. And I mean firmly 0. Spiderboss says, Conor McGregor working for Vince McMahon? That is interesting. And Spiderboss says, Edge was added to the new SmackDown intro. Well, as I say, a contract is waiting. Dad says, if it was on Freeview or links, I could watch it. I wouldn't support that. Spiderboss says, put Dominic Mysterio on the Octagon. Dominic Mysterio versus Conor McGregor would be fun. I find it more likely that what we'll see is people from UFC coming over to WWE where they have fixed fights. Michael says, Vince has been training his audience from the beginning that it's sports entertainment and not an actual combat sport. You say that, but he does still like to combine the two as often as possible, especially when Brock Lesnar's involved. Dan says, I'm still like, over these WWE, UFC things, not a chance in hell any squash matches or whatever happens with WWE. Bismo says, how soon will we notice a change in programming with Endeavor taking over? Good question. Let's dive into this. I don't think you will. So a lot of people are speculating that this is going to be some massive explosive Raw. That this is going to be the end of an era. That we're going to see a huge, colossal, immediate change. So here's the thing. 1, Endeavor hasn't actually taken over yet. That's tomorrow. 2, they've known it's coming for a long time. They've made 0 changes. 3, Triple H is planning the show, and he wants to be consistent with his storylines. I would not expect particular involvement from Endeavor in this Monday Night Raw. Vince McMahon has not been involved in tonight's Monday Night Raw. In fact, Vince McMahon hasn't really done any changes to creative for months now. Months. Before the surgery, he was not particularly involved. So if you're expecting Endeavor to come in, make massive sweeping changes, and Triple H to basically just do as he's told, that's not going to happen. Triple H is in charge of creative in the WWE. Nick Khan is in charge of financial decisions in the WWE. That's been the case for a long time now. And going forwards, that's going to continue to be the case. That's the plan now, and Vince McMahon can indeed step in over Triple H's head and make changes. But I would not expect any massive sweeping changes anytime soon. It's just not what's, if you'll forgive the pun, best for business. Hector says, Tom, Brock Lesnar beat Mark Hunt at UFC 200, but the decision was changed to a no contest because Lesnar failed both an out of competition and night to fight drug test. That's the story, Tom. Thank you for the clarification. I appreciate that. Daniela says, maybe there could be a few superstars released. I cannot sit here and say yes or no as regards that. I hope not. Barry says, if I wanted to see people fighting for real surrounded by a screaming crowd, I'd go down to my local city centre on a Friday night for free. I would step out my front door. Angel Lucia says, I predict John Jones versus Brock Lesnar fight will happen. Spider-Boss says, Raw hasn't been that good after SummerSlam. The best of Raw has been Gunter and Alpha Academy, which has been very good. Sean says, do you think we see Becky tonight to build up her match on NXT tomorrow with Tiffany? Possibly, yes. I certainly think it's likely they'll use whatever Raw they can to do so. Daniela says, thank you for these amazing streams, Tom. You are welcome. And says, I hope not to. I hate when superstars get released. This leaves us with a little bit to cover. 2 flight risks that I want to talk about. Gable Steveson has not been released by the WWE. He never was released by the WWE, but he is looked at as more of a flight risk than previous. Gable Stevenson's contract does allow him to work outside of the WWE when something essentially strikes his fancy, and he's been taking advantage of that pretty regularly and pretty religiously, to the point, in fact, that he's rarely actually made any appearances in WWE. I did report previously that he would be making an appearance at WrestleMania, that being, I believe, last year's WrestleMania, in which we had the Gable off, where he stepped up to Chad Gable. That was fun. Things were supposed to move forward from there, but something else took his fancy. He then appeared alongside Kurt Angle backstage. Things were supposed to push along after that, but something else took his fancy. And this, unfortunately, is where we've landed. Gable Steveson is, to say it as carefully as I possibly could, sources indicate that Gable Steveson is not necessarily the most trusted by WWE Creative. They believe in his ability, but he's just not regularly there. So they're exploring options that will allow them to do otherwise. Gable Steveson is still under WWE contract. The WWE is still planning to use him. He has not been released. However, they are certainly considering possibilities of a change to his contract or any sort of actual guarantee that he will be there when they make plans for him. Another person, if you'll forgive the pun, who's a bit of a flight risk, is Matt Riddle. Matt Riddle's position on the WWE card has gone down, down and down, and at the moment he's essentially paired up with Drew McIntyre who is way further down the card, simply by association. Matt Riddle's return to the WWE recently was supposed to be much more triumphant than it has been, but unfortunately things and problems are following Matt Riddle around. There was an issue with a flight. He has, or at least it's been reported, that he has accused someone of harassment, shall we say. And it's just a very difficult situation to handle. He really doesn't want to be mentioning things like that because it convinces people to go looking up certain accusations that were made against him. Just want to point that one out. And I'll leave that there. Matt Riddle is someone who may convince the WWE to cut their losses. Michael says Vince deciding to take the billions in the sale over handing it over to Shane and Stephanie is sad, yet kind of funny. Zero says hello. Hello, Zero. How you doing? King Az says, Tom, who do you think will dethrone Seth? I still think Gunter. I'm really excited by the prospect, but Damian Priest is right there. Vegeta says, thanks, Tom. Thank you, Vegeta. I agree with Dan here, saying Jones would humiliate Brock, and Brock is a shrewd businessman, so he wouldn't do that. That, in many ways, is why I think the actual proper match between Brock Lesnar and Bobby Lashley hasn't happened. Zero says, I'd like it if the Honky Tonk Man showed up to Gunter's celebration and gives him a good hit with a guitar. If that happens, there should be blood. Eric says, who's your favourite outside of WWE wrestler? Mine is Ospreay. Jay White, no question. Zero suggests Bryan Danielson. Shadow Demon says, any idea when we may see Kyrie return in a WWE debut? She is involved with the WWE. A contract has not been signed, to my knowledge, by Kairi Sane. That would, of course, be stepping on quite a few toes and technically kind of illegal. But there is an agreement in place between Kairi Sane and the WWE. It'll be a little while. She has other commitments to wrap up, and she's not someone who's going to take the piss. So I would expect it to be a little while. Adrian, Matt Riddle is not All Elite. Vegeta says Riddle should be released. He's an issue, and certainly that's your opinion, Vegeta. And Barry says Riddle and Orton worked, Riddle and McIntyre doesn't. I agree. Spider-Ball says, I think the only time Riddle didn't get in trouble was when he was with Randy Orton as RK Bro. There may have been a reason for that. That, of course, being Randy Orton. The last thing I'm going to discuss. A lot of WWE wrestlers are right now talking about CM Punk, and it certainly seems like they really are interested in CM Punk coming into the WWE. It really does seem like they want to work with the guy. Or it really does seem like wrestling media and interviewers are all asking them the exact same question. And they're very diplomatically avoiding giving a straight answer. Let me give the example of Finn Balor. When he was asked if he wanted to wrestle CM Punk, he said, I'd wrestle a broom if the pay was good. When you realise that he was asked directly about CM Punk, does that sound like a man who's excited to wrestle CM Punk? Literally said he'd wrestle a broom. Doesn't sound that excited to me. Let's talk about Drew McIntyre, who was asked if he wanted to wrestle CM Punk. Didn't seem that excited either. I do think when it comes to wrestling media, wrestling interviews, and wrestlers themselves, there is a false narrative that gets out there because people don't actually report the questions. You see different websites and different outlets reporting, this person said this, without mentioning that they were directly asked about a wrestler who does not work for their company. It upsets me a little bit when they don't highlight, and it seems like, oh, Drew McIntyre really wanted to talk about CM Punk. Drew McIntyre was asked about CM Punk. I really do feel like sometimes we need to make clear how the media works. Because right now, if you talk about CM Punk, you get the hits, don't you? You get the clickbait, and everybody's giving you money. Sometimes it's that simple. In many ways, it's also why, for example, Paul White was asked about Bray Wyatt in an interview before All In. It certainly does get people talking. Leon says it sucks to see Riddle destroy his own career. A year ago, I saw him as a future world champion, but that looks more unlikely. Yes, it does. I don't think the crowds are really behind him at the moment either. Vegeta says, great. Jay White is great. Wish he was in WWE though, not on the mid-card of the second show. King Azza says, do you think if Mercedes doesn't sign with AEW, do you think she'll go to WWE? She will be signing with AEW. Razar says it's going to be interesting how WWE handles this Riddle situation. Yes, it will. Typically with WWE, it's kind of head in the sand, but Triple H is not that... Triple H is not that guy. Sean says, do you believe the report by Fightful Select saying WWE and LA Knight are far apart on money and a new deal doesn't appear imminent? No, not necessarily. I don't think they're far apart on money, but certainly I'd wait and see what actually happens. Vegeta thinks Finn vs. Broom would be a better match. And Barry said it's the same as how the media reports politics. Yes, it is. Chris says, I mean, my show on Tuesday got hits because CM Punk was our main story. Yep. Hey, it's media. That's how it goes. I certainly did some reporting of when CM Punk was fired. Now I'm trying to move on and nobody seemed to want to. Spider-Boss says, I remember wrestling media making Mercedes money questions to Bayley this year. Yep. And there's a reason you know about that. Because they got the headlines. They baited you. Bismo says, don't think the locker room wants to put up with drama/cancer he could bring if he was to re-sign. Michael says, was it Collision on Saturday? Was bummed that Jay wasn't there. Really wanted to see him, but I'm so hyped to see Jay's return. And Trekipedia says, did Von Wagner get hurt on NXT or is it an angle? He got hurt. Okay. So, we are 45 minutes in. I want to say a huge thank you. We have peaked at a rather big number for some of our recent shows. 115 viewers. So I want to say a big thank you for everyone hitting like. We reached 65 likes and our chat rate really did very well as well. We're at 300 views already. As I did say previous, we are currently at 4,771 subscribers by the end of this month. Now that the sub gain has started to slow down a bit, I expect we'll be reaching 5,000. At that point, as you know, it's been a lot of YouTube advertising. I'm going to stop, work out how many of those translate to views, and then go forwards from there. But I do want to say a massive thank you to all of you for being here so regularly at these shows, for checking out the work that I do, and for guaranteeing by being here, by hitting like and by commenting, that more people find this channel. The YouTube advertising has given us a lot, but we've still gained more than 600 subscribers in the past 2 weeks without factoring in the advertising. Those are people who are actually looking through what we're doing here and are invested. And a large part of that is because of you being here, chatting to me, chatting amongst yourselves, and enjoying the shows. So at this point, I want to say a massive thank you once again and wrap it up. My name is Tom Colohue. Thank you very much for watching. You have been fantastic, and I will see you all very soon.